Talk to me about the balancing act. First of all, I've got Italy coming out of recession, Germany under pressure. How would you describe your Spanish market to me?
Good morning, everyone. Well, the banking environment in Europe in general is challenging, despite which we continued to grow our revenues and we improved credit quality and were able to cut costs. But undoubtedly, the market conditions in Europe and specifically in Spain are clearly weaker than in Latin America. We have a very strong presence in high growth markets in Latin America, and that was what compensated a bit of a weaker performance in Europe.
Are you worried about the trend that you're seeing? Are there any cracks appearing in that European story that suggest we're heading to a deeper economic trough?
No. When we look at the performance of our units in Europe, we have positive evolution in the auto finance business, in Santander Consumer Finance, which is the largest independent auto finance in Europe. It's growing its revenues, it's gaining market share. Despite that car sales are down 3%, okay, we are growing our portfolio and it's doing pretty well. The UK is challenging. There is a very high competition, strong competition in mortgages, and we have the uncertainty associated with Brexit. And in Spain, really, the trends are very, very similar to what we've seen in recent quarters. Good economic performance overall, with positive volume growth in small and medium-sized businesses and consumer loans, good production in mortgages, but insufficient to compensate the amortization of the back book.
Let's talk about the cost cuts. You mentioned them a little bit earlier. I know that you have a global target of 1.2 billion. $1 billion of that is in Europe. What I want to get a sense, if the pressure in Spain, how many branches are you going to have to close in Spain? And I suppose, consequentially, an estimate of perhaps the jobs cuts that you might have to make at home in Spain.
Our customers are changing their behavior. The way the relationship with the banks is changing, and they're using less the branches and more the digital channels. If you look at our numbers in the last 12 months, we grew our digital customers by 6.5 million, which is a huge number. So, and also
what does that mean then for the reduction, let's say, in branch space?
Well, we've been adjusting our physical distribution network in all countries, also in Spain. As a consequence of the merger with Banco Popular, we've been closing branches. We are starting the dialogue with the unions to look at the next phase of the restructuring. So, out of that dialogue, out of those negotiations, we will publish the figures. But clearly the trends are towards significantly fewer branches.
Okay, can I talk to you about your current capital raising? I mean, the analysts quite like what you're doing in Mexico. They say getting a hold of a full ownership of the Mexican business makes very good sense. How's that rights issue going? What's the response been? Because this is the third capital raising in as many years. Is the appetite good, solid for this rights issue? Give us a guidance.
Well, it's early to say, because this process will finish probably in September once we get all the regulatory approvals. We have to get regulatory approvals in the U.S. and in Mexico. The reaction so far has been very, very positive. Those investors in our Mexican unit are able to monetize their investment at a pretty high price, much higher than any of the analysts' target prices. And for the shareholders of the group, this is an investment that will return around 14 to 15% in euros. So for both, it's a good proposition, and we think it will go very, very well. But again, this is a lengthy process. Will finish in September.
Will you replicate this, for example, in Brazil? I mean, this seems to be, there's a lovely line from one of the analysts that we talked to say that you're kicking the tires in Mexico. You're testing the appetite of the market for this strategy. Would you like to replicate this in Brazil or other subsidiaries that you have smaller holdings in?
Well, Mexico is a very specific case. We are happy with the current structure, and currently we have no plans on the table right now regarding any other listed subsidiary.
Are you worried about the accession, the political risk at home in Spain in terms of the risk of banking taxes? I mean, we obviously have a potentially new government. Podemos may have a higher voice in that new government. We don't know yet. Are you concerned about that in any way?
Well, the outcome of the election will require agreements between different political parties, and it's too early to say. We trust politicians will react swiftly to what Spanish people have expressed and reach an agreement as soon as possible with responsibility and long-term vision. We think there are really three key priorities that the government will need to address. One is unemployment, so we really need to do job creation policies, budget stability to ensure that the economy continues to thrive, and incentivizing long-term savings to ensure that our future growth and to make sure that the Spanish economy is less reliant on international capital markets. And I think those are the key issues. But again, with specific questions regarding banking tax, etc., I think it's too early because we haven't even seen the agreements.
I know. I just thought I'd get that in there, just a little bit of an early touch. We'll go for one last hurrah on the hypotheticals. Obviously, the Commerzbank-Deutsche Bank deal has fallen apart for now and certainly doesn't look as if any more life's going to come into it. Would there be assets across borders that you are actively interested in Europe? Is that part of the strategy? Would you look at some Commerzbank assets if they came up, or Commerzbank itself? Does a deal like that maybe make sense for yourself and Ana Botín?
Well, to be completely honest, this is something that we are really not thinking of right now. We think Europe needs further progress in banking union for cross-border mergers or acquisitions to happen, and we still have a long way to go in that sense. So again, this is something that we are not contemplating at all at the moment.